All right, good evening, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our February meeting.
He's not here tonight.
Just before we jump in here, just want to note that we did have an executive session, I guess it was Monday the 3rd, for personnel and contracts. No action was taken in that session. First item tonight is the approval of the meeting minutes, unanimous consent. Do we have any questions or input on the meeting minutes from last month? Okay, approved. Next, we have a presentation. Dr. Staves, you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. If it pleases the board, I have Mr. Jake Lezak here tonight. Jake is a retired soccer coach, continuing physical education teacher, and a Wildcat legend who would like to propose a athletics Hall of Fame that has come and gone over the years, but I think he's trying to resurrect it in a more permanent way. Mr. Lezak.
Turn that on. Is that good?
Sounds good.
All right. Perfect. So yeah, I mean, you guys just saw me a little bit ago about retiring from coaching, and immediately I've taken on other things. And just so you know, that was kind of the plan. As I talked with Coach Lane after we retired and finished with that, it wasn't to just go away. So the plan for me is how else can I help and support our athletics and our school and our community and kind of bridge some gaps. And one of the big things that I looked at, and I've talked to people through the years, is that our school district has no Athletics Hall of Fame anymore. We had one. It goes all the way back. The last induction of a class was 2002. And I was like, wow, that's been some years. And I know I've talked to some people that are willing to step back on a committee and get this kind of resurrected, as Dr. Stage had said, and bring this back to life. And we have a lot of athletes and teams, and that we've taken a tremendous amount of pride in, and I think it's something that we should definitely highlight, and finding a way to do that. I also feel that this, as a coach, this is a great way to help bring our alumni back, to make them feel like they're still part of it, to give that sense of pride in what they did and what they accomplished. And so, looking through the years of my coaching and saying, you know what, I couldn't get any alumni to do it, so now that I've stepped down, it's time to step up to the plate. So what I've actually put together, I cannot own at all. I completely went on to a couple of Commonwealth University websites and looked at their Hall of Fame and what they had written up, and I made it ours. So that is essentially what I have done, is I've included what they had in the past and made it so that it was pre-Athens area school district to Athens High School, and SRU, so everybody can be represented as we go through. And policies and procedures are there for you guys to take a look at. There would be 11 total people on the committee, 2 from the SRU, 2 from Athens High School, and then 2 representing the Athens Area School District since the consolidation there. 2 at-large members from the community. I believe I have 1 board member in there, and then the automatic positions besides the board member position would also be the sitting superintendent, athletic director, and principal at the high school. So those would be automatic. Whoever is in those positions would automatically have in there. Does that make 12? That's 12. I don't, once I ran out of fingers, I just guessed. I'm sorry. So, I guess really it's just a matter of, my thought for this was not to have it as a standalone, to have it as something that the school district does, and that we can continue to have committee members become part of this and continue rolling through. And again, I think the reason it went away was because it stood by itself. They had to fundraise, they had to do all those things. My vision for this is not to be a massive expense to the school district. Honestly, my thought was keep it personal with the sports. So the committee meets, I think I have down there twice a year, more if they need to. I didn't want it to be something where people are like, oh my gosh, another committee, and a meeting every month and doing all those things. No, we take nominations that already exist, that are still there, that I have in another folder in my office that I could produce anytime you guys need to see it. And who already is in the Hall of Fame, as we have it, and have all those records. And then, honestly, I thought we get plaques and we start to put some things together. Maybe the committee expands and does something else, but it doesn't have to be that way. And then we look at the outside of the Wildcat Way and out around the stadium, and maybe those are places where we honor our Hall of Fame members. And that's something that the district has to decide on and at that point. And maybe they do it at a special football game, at homecoming for a football player that they want to recognize. It doesn't have to be an expensive banquet or anything. But again, those are decisions that everyone as a committee would make and go there. So basically, I'm kind of asking that we approve this, I guess, Dr. Stage, or you guys discuss what you would like to do next, and then we can put a committee together. I have members that want want to do this. I still have a few gaps to fill, but I didn't want to move forward without an official let's go, and do that, because it would just be spinning our wheels.
So do you mind? Since
questions or anything, whatever.
I think some of us have been voluntold we're on this committee.
Basically.
No, I don't know if we have to formally recognize this or not. I certainly think that, I think you would want to hear about whether you have the board's support, for sure.
Absolutely.
You have my support. I would love to see this happen. Mm-hmm. And this came to me, I was way too new at this job. Someone sat in front of me in 2014 or 2015, said they're bringing back the Hall of Fame. They met one time and I never saw them again. So I'm not exactly what sure happened then.
I don't either.
It's good to know, and I think you have a good plan.
Do we have all the stuff from those that are already in it?
Yes. Yep. And speaking with Mike Adams, I think he said he felt like there was a few things missing, but we'll still see what we can find. See what we can. Put it together. Yep.
What is the cost?
$0.00, really. I mean, for us really to start it up, we could look at booster clubs and say, hey, we're going to induct this person. It's a plaque. I wouldn't look at it any more than that, really. And the number of people doesn't have to be huge each year.
Yeah, and we might be able to get some local businesses to sponsor maybe some startup capital in terms of getting money for plaques, or even coupons for McDonald's for dinner.
I'm not a guy to run a fundraiser, I can tell you that. Ask my booster club. Well, you don't want me in charge of a fundraiser. But,
would it be like an initial upfront cost, though, to do the catch-up from 2002 to now? Like, if we're going to recognize a bunch of people, have to go off and maybe buy the plaques for all those folks, would we maybe expect like a larger amount to get started, and then from that point forward, every year would be like pretty nominal, right?
Right. And I think that would probably be a committee decision to look at and say, hey, let's try it. Let's pick a couple extra each year to kind of bridge some of those years.
To catch up from those years we missed.
And get up, within a few years. I wouldn't want to slam that, first year right out of the gate, but that would be expensive.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Still some things obviously that we would need to iron out, but I at least wanted to get this ball rolling forward so then we could, we had a leg to stand on.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
You volunteers that want to do it, somebody wants to head it, that sounds perfect. Right?
Yep.
At no cost.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Can we talk about the downside?
Downside.
What are the cons?
Some people might get upset that they didn't make it in.
Okay.
I don't know. I have no idea.
But for us, I don't think that.
It's completely based on, the committee's decision based on nominees, and that's kind of the beauty of it. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've got an opinion. Does the board need to take formal action on this unless they're formally seeking
I will
funds?
double check with the Honorable Mr. Barrett, but I don't think so. I think it's just a blessing at this time.
Right, not tonight,
No.
right? If we had to, it'd be
I
later,
don't think
right?
Everybody just kind of nod.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. And obviously, you guys know how to reach me if you have any other questions or anything else. And I do have some gaps to fill, so I'm sure I'll still be reaching out to a few of you and getting some names and going there.
And come back for an update in the future too, once it gets rolling. Like,
Yeah. Oh,
let us know how it's
absolutely.
going.
Yes. Yeah. You'll definitely be kept in the loop. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Jake. All right, next we will move on to committee reports. We have finance and operations up first.
Yes, we met, we met earlier. We looked at one of the main things that we needed to talk about was the replacement at Lynch. Two 200-gallon, it's a 400-gallon PVI water heater. We had some issues with it. Facilities is asking basically to replace it with two 200 gallons. They've had quite a few issues with this so far. The water heater is about 20 years old. Max life expectancy is 25. There's been a lot of repairs. A lot of times they've had to do stuff that we really should just replace it. So, and I just want to give hats off to facilities because they've done a phenomenal job and the reporting has been great. So thank you. That's it. That would be completed.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Personnel and policy.
Committee met tonight. We reviewed a number of policies. A couple of these are listed as second read, and I'll just explain, why that is, and then for the rest, I am going to recommend we move them to second read. But the organizational chart, we do this every year, but we've actually just made some updates so that it doesn't have to be reviewed as often. It just shows structure rather than has any names attached to it, so it should just be more standardized. So it's a pretty straightforward policy. There's a couple of Title IX policies that PSBA have told us to move back to the 2020 versions. So we have just got the 2020 versions of those policies that were previously voted on and approved. So we're recommending those go to second read as well. Last meeting we talked about student activity funds. And Mr. Stage did provide the board with an update on how those funds were managed through the local bank and just sort of the process and procedures for that. So I think that answered all of our questions. Then there's a number of first read policies. These are regular policies that we would normally have. We on an annual basis, policy 626, which is around procurement, that's updated based on the consumer price index. So every year the figures in that are updated to reflect the latest numbers. So that's why I'm saying I think we should just move that one to a second read because that is just an annual update where the numbers are updated. I think the bidding amount has gone up to $23,800. And for a state bid threshold, and the state quotation threshold's gone up to $12,900. So those are just annual updates that are made, so we're just in compliance with that. A couple of the other policies, 610 and 611, are related to that policy, so we're recommending the amounts in those be updated. So really straightforward updates based on the annual consumer price index, and then the other four policies, 620, 621, 622, 624, just explain more about our fund balance. These were just policies we were reviewing per our normal schedule. I don't think we had any changes to them, and would recommend those move on to second read as well tonight, just to keep the policies moving through. Nothing that as a committee we had any concerns about. So I think that's it. Kathy, Joe, Cindy, did I miss anything? Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, curriculum, Mr. Jones.
The curriculum committee met. We went over, they've been completing and working through trainings with various curriculums, the CKLA, the science and math, done professional developments. We talked about, they've been going over Firefly data analysis. Firefly is like practice tests for the PSSAs, PSAs, I guess, and analyzing those. And then we talked about, if you look on the agenda on curriculum and instruction number 12, there's various overnight trips requests, also a Spanish class trip request to Costa Rica, and then we talked about the school calendar. The draft is on the agenda, but I do have some hard copies if anybody wanted. If anybody wants one to look at, but there are also on the computer, so I grabbed them if anybody wanted one. And that was it. I don't know. There'll be further discussions later on.
Yeah,
on
when,
these
the
matters or not?
calendar's on the agenda later, so if we have to discuss that, we can discuss that when it's up for vote,
Sure.
as with the various trips.
What information did the committee receive on the Costa Rica trip?
So we asked, I guess that's with the Spanish class, we believe upper level Spanish class, and then the costs. Is that wonderful? Can you come? Can you present? And because there was some questions that we had.
I don't think I need the microphone. Oh, I don't need it. There we go. Correct. So October 22nd to the 29th seems to be a window when there's not a lot of,
29th.
yeah, October 22nd through the 29th. The travel window is the 21st, or the 21st through the 30th of this October. The cost is $33,509 per student, $95 to sign up, and then $427 a month. We plan on doing fundraising, of course, as much as possible. It's an 8-day trip. We tour a coffee farm. We zip line through the rainforest. We snorkel. We go on a coffee tour. We visit 2 volcanoes. We kayak, take a boat tour. We visit 2 national parks. Costa Rica's huge on environmental conservation. So any student that would be interested also in, the biological aspect of that would be, I studied abroad there in 1994 and went back in 2018. So I know Costa Rica very well. They have
Who's eligible to go to the?
Spanish 3 and 4. We want to think about opening up to level 2 also. The feeling in the past, I had gone with Loyalstock Township School District to the Dominican Republic, and they felt that, any level student should go to inspire them to study Spanish. I don't really feel comfortable taking 9th graders myself. I think 10th grade. I think I know what we've done, at that school too, was to get letters of recommendation, that for character, just to make sure we can trust students, because that's, with younger kids, I think that's a concern.
Mrs. Kulik, do you have an expected number of students you plan on taking? Is there a minimum?
I don't really think there's a minimum. I know that if we want our own bus to be guaranteed those dates, we'd need 30 kids.
Okay.
So I don't really know. There was a lot of interest, polling my students and then telling them that this is the cost and we'd be going this October. This is the proposed trip. How many students would be interested? I polled 2 classes. I had about 25 kids interested. Whether they can actually do that, that's...
And this would be paid by the students?
Students,
right?
yes,
the
paid directly
families.
through EF Tours. It's the same as Mrs. Chairs, same company as Mrs. Cherzanowski uses, so.
So with it being a part of a class trip as opposed to, or related to a class, what about those students that wouldn't be able to attend? So since this is part of their, structured class at school that they're taking, and then if there were students that weren't able to attend, would the school district be covering the costs, or what would happen with those students that were not
Just
attending?
what we've done always in the past is just whoever wants to go and can afford it would go. So, you know, you have to be, we were talking about being a Spanish 3 or 4 student, like I said. We have some, I know that we have some kids in Walla taking Spanish. That's open for discussion. The students that would stay home would just, you know, do work in the classroom. Probably be signed a book. I have individual readers for kids, the library.
Would there be any Spanish immersion? I mean, beyond visiting these sites, or like, I'm just related to your curriculum and what you're teaching in class, how would this trip correspond to the curriculum in class?
Well, I teach through comprehensible input, and I teach through high-frequency vocabulary. And the fact that they'd be interacting with Costa Ricans would be, you know, and understanding what's going on, being able to communicate in a real-life situation. Right now, they can only communicate with me and with each other, and then they'll, you know, trying their accents out, you know, and so expansion of what they're learning is they'd be, you know, learning about people, how lucky they are to be in the United States, you know, how other people live. The income for the average Costa Rican is significantly lower than ours. You know, people struggle to pay rent. And just, again, the science aspect of going to Costa Rica would be neat. Cultural, you know, being in a culture, experiencing the culture. Differences in the world, opening their eyes to, you know, the world is more than Athens,
Did you
Pennsylvania.
do a proposal for curriculum? We just didn't get it if you did.
No,
So-
we didn't. It's in the packet, though. She didn't come to the committee, but there's in the packet, there's information about,
On my
there's,
end.
on the
On the
computer.
computer.
There's 3 attachments in there with the details of the trip.
How about for the days? So just, there was some questions that we were, in the curriculum committee, we were talking about, you know, a Wednesday to Wednesday kind of wasn't really with a holiday. I know it's not the same as the history club, but the history club usually tries to go during Easter, not miss as many days. Was there,
Right.
how did that come about?
We looked at a lull in extracurricular activities. There were a lot of students that were interested that said they had other things going on and they couldn't go, and that was the window. And, you know, Mr. Gabriel and I felt like it was a time of year when everything was kind of slow.
Okay.
So that was a
Yeah.
good time rather than trying to fit it in the spring when too much is going on already.
Mr. Gabriel, question for you. If we had students that were attending, for instance, if this went ahead, we had students that were attending this, students that are attending maybe a history club trip, students that might be in other extracurricular or other programs like FFA. Just thinking about how many days of school for those students might be missed. Do you have thoughts on how we'd be tracking that? Because you could potentially have students that, you know, are involved in a number of different clubs and different activities that because of this are missing quite a number of days of actual school. So have you have any thoughts on that or any sort of details on how we'd be looking at this so that we can make sure that we do have kids in school learning as well as, you know, these definitely beneficial extracurricular trips?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Do you need a microphone? Yeah, you do, because people online might not hear you.
What happens when you give me a mic? So, Mrs. Smart, no, probably have not considered that angle of things. There, you know, I don't know exactly who was going on what by name, but we would have to kind of come up with something to make sure that they weren't maybe crossing or something along those lines. I think maybe because, you know, I don't know what the involvement would be with FFA, crossing over with Spanish, et cetera. They might not be in the same, you know, maybe one's going to go one, one's going to go the other, but we'd have to really sit down and kind of look at, I guess, the logistics of the kids that wouldn't be there. We don't have anything as of yet, to answer your question. But that would be a concern, definitely.
Yeah, I think it was the overall
Sure. If you look at the process, though, with a lot of these trips, the fundraising that's involved as well, I mean, the stars would, I think, would have to be really aligned for a kid to be involved in every single one of those things. But it's something worth looking at, obviously, to make sure that we're minimizing the days that that the kids will be
I
out.
think we're particularly curious, or I know I am, because I don't know if I've encountered one that's related to, I think FFA is the only one that I can think of that's related to an actual class. So that's, you know, yeah, okay. So those, to me, that's where I'm just trying to make sure I understand it in relation to the class and the curriculum versus a club that they may participate in and have other requirements.
And this is
One
not a
thing we
club.
could look at,
It's not a club.
if this becomes something that Ms. Kulik would like to do, if it's approved, et cetera, if this could be something that could rotate every so many years, so a kid would maybe coming through Athens that's taking the Spanish courses, the higher classes, would be able to do this one time. That would, you know, we could do it on a 5-year cycle or so.
So, yeah, and I appreciate that, and I think my only thought was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think when we do these things for like the History Club, they get about 16 months to fundraise for those. And just looking at the timeline now, my thought would be, I'm not opposed to the Costa Rica trip, but maybe it's a 2026 thing that allows kids to fundraise a little bit longer for it, so that the burden on them to maybe make those decisions to do both in one year, they may be able to do that in alternating years. It's just a suggestion, and it gives that Spanish class a little bit more time to prepare, and you might actually build your numbers.
That was my thought also. You know, we talked about this in November, so we had, you know, a year
Right.
or so, October actually, I think. And then, you know, because of the board had made a decision on some things that we
Yeah.
were waiting to propose it.
I mean, I think
So-
that for me, you know, I want access. So we always say that we know students, there are certain students that'll pay for every trip. Their families can do that. And I do think there are some parents whose kids, if they can save and fundraise and take advantage of the opportunities to build a
Yeah.
fund, they absolutely will take advantage of every trip they can. And they'll sell anything and everything. It just might take them a little longer.
Right.
So just my suggestion, maybe.
Okay.
I might have brought that up earlier. I don't know.
Because that could be something like the Spanish class has, like an annual trip or whatever is, whoever's allowed to go. Sort of like with the senior trip, you know, they start in 7th, 8th grade building their funds, and then they have the money to use for, if they knew this was something that,
Right.
once you're at 3 and 4 level Spanish, this is something they do, there's a trip available, they can start their funding early.
My concern is the missed days of school
How many days?
and the students that are staying back not on the trip, and it's actually class time being missed for them as well.
Well, like I said, I have, reading is the most efficient and effective way to learn a foreign language. And I have leveled readers in my room. I have a lot of, and a lot of different, you know, kids need to read things they're interested in also. So absolutely, there could be assignments related to those readers, so they're not missing out on Spanish.
Is there a limit, or not the limit to the number, but a minimum? Like, you gotta have at least, we have to have at least X amount.
Yes. Usually we shoot for, you know, 10, 12. I mean, I've gone with that number before.
Okay.
So,
But that's kind of neat too, to have the whole school on one.
yes, and then we don't have to try to be on someone else's bus, you know, that another neighboring district is going on or whatever. Yeah.
You can set your,
Mhm.
what you're
I-
doing and you're,
yeah.
you have the kids contained with you.
Right, and I can't make those predictions. I don't know what, you know, there was a lot of interest. There was, you know, obviously not as much interest when it was $3,500 and it was going to happen this year. There was still plenty interest. But, you know, out of 40 students, 25 were like, yes, I'm absolutely interested, and I think we could afford it, you know, with fundraising and whatever, or just could afford it, so, yeah.
All right, yeah, we can revisit the conversation when we get to that part on the agenda, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, extracurricular activities. Anything to report on?
So I'll just report out on behalf of the extracurricular committee, just one thing. We did receive 8 bids for the athletic supervisor. We are looking to host a small few of them back for interviews this Thursday. There might be some weather, we might have to talk about that, but I do think there's a lot of quality candidates in there, so stay tuned on that. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Kevin, at this time? Okay, that's where we're at right now.
All right, then Dr. Sage, you can continue into your report for the next section if you'd like.
Just happy to be here. That's my report. No, seriously, on a serious note, it's nice to see our district continue to grow, and I just want to make sure everybody understands, like, there are a billion opportunities out there for us to provide our students with unique experiences. Just a testament by what you see in the field trip list, what you see our teachers doing. I just got certified as a judge for Odyssey of the Mind because we have so many teams going on the 22nd of February. We're going to take over Pocono Mountain West. It's going to be an absolute crazy time. I just am really thankful for all of the adults that are putting our kids first and making sure they get these quality experiences. And I'm talking about our staff and obviously some of our really, really, really well-prepared parents. The regular season for winter sports is coming to an end, so I'll just wrap in a little athletic director stuff. Really proud of all of our winter sports teams. They've really persevered through some challenges. We've had some successes. Moving into district, I think we all have opportunity to participate in district play, so stay tuned for that next week. Our bocce ball team, does anybody know how bocce ball did tonight? So our bocce ball played in their last game tonight against North Penn Mansfield, but they were walking into that at 2-2. So depending on how they turned out tonight, they could be over 500 now. And lastly, I just want to point out that the Governor Shapiro did present his budget address to legislation. It did provide for modest increases to education. I will say that Athens will benefit some. One of the things that I've really dived into is for the second year in a row, we've not been able to acquire any adequacy supplement funding. I do know why that's happening. It's a double-edged sword to say. One, it's because of the commitment this board has had over the last decade to not place an undue burden on our taxpayers, and that is positive, and the negative is we do not receive adequacy funding because our local effort ratio is not high enough for us to see that funding. So when you look at the money, when you look at the dollars, and you see every school district in our area receiving adequacy funding, and we are not, that's because of what our plans and intentions were for the last 10 years on our local tax base. So I just want to be very clear about that. You do notice that our to-date cyber charter school bill is approaching $900,000. It does say as of February, but you do understand that we don't necessarily get a monthly bill from every cyber charter school every month. It can come in quarters, it can come bi-monthly, it can come every other month. It just is a erratic billing cycle. That $890,000 contributes to approximately, this goes give or take one or two, 70 students. And just so everybody is completely aware, the average cost of a teacher, and now that's not their salary, the average cost of a teacher is about $125,000 to $135,000, and the average cost of an aide is somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000. Now, salary excludes we also have to include benefits, PCERS, and other associated costs to have that person work in our district. So when you look at that $897,000, I want you to put that in real people terms. So that is real people that could be working with smaller class sizes, one-on-one, smaller groups, focusing on the mental health supports we need, directing our reading instruction, providing math supports. That's where this district suffers. I just want to point that out. It's not, and I want to tie this into the local effort ratio. So we have been, and I'm proud of this board, for making very wise decisions and not just blindly taxing our local community. That's not where we're going to make up our difference in funding. The difference in funding is people committing to putting a limit or a cap on people who do not agree with the accountability that we have as an Athens area school district and just leave and take incredible amounts of funds out of the other students' hands. I know that sounds harsh, but the truth of the matter is, it's not a fair way to fund cyber charter schools. There is no accountability for them. I dare you to find them. I know we are not the best when it comes to the state standard scores, but what I've been trying to impress since I've started my idea of pushing for a positive influence of what this district can do is that you can leave here if you take advantage of the opportunities and be highly successful. We have people that are in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, who graduated from Harvard. We have people that own businesses, that are doctors, highly successful people who gathered and gained a valuable education here. And every time we lose funds to cyber charter school who are underperforming and not accountable, that is not what we need as a Wildcat family. It's not about raising taxes. It's about getting cyber charter school reform. I would like to just stop talking now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stage. Yep. We have no report out on Blast at U17, so next Career Center. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so a few things. You saw in your packet, we will vote on the budget for the Career Center this year. This is the last year for the bond. 25-26, there will be no more bond payment. Our percentage as a school did go up. The increase is $25,899 for this year. Our district share is 23%. There's 8 schools, we pay 23% by the size. So that's what we're voting on for that part of it. And I know that sounds like a lot, but per pupil, I believe it's $6,800 to educate. Is that right? 6.8?
It's actually a little bit lower this upcoming budget.
Because of the bond, right?
Because of we don't have to pay the bond anymore. So while you'll see that our bill is about $634,000 for our children to attend the Career Center, which is about 132
6,000, right?
It's going to be about $4,800 next year per pupil because we don't have a $150,000 bond payment.
Right, our portion of the bond we don't have
Yeah.
to pay.
Yep.
Okay. And so that's what we're voting on for next year is the budget for the Career Center. There aren't any expansions. The welding expansion is complete. They have, People's State Bank gave money for VRs. They're going to have a VR classroom. They're moving a couple things around. And right now, they have eliminated the tool and die, and they're working on selling that equipment. But they didn't want to just have an auction. The grounds, he did some research, and some of the machines range anywhere from, $8,000 to $22,000. So they're trying to figure out the best way to get the most money for the machines to have the money back. We have hired a second nursing instructor, and we also have a second cosmetology this year for both of those, and we have a waiting list at the Career Center for all of them. So to go the highlights of that, they just had their skills, so they present and they compete in skills contests. And if I have any names wrong, anyone in the ether, I apologize. But Athens has, in auto refinishing, who will be going to state, Stan Vetnitsky is first place. Athens has, in prepared speech, Brooke Geiger took first place. And in technical computer applications, Monique Doney took first place, and she'll be going to states. And I just got this yesterday. For job interview, Reagan McDaniel took second. And we have in welding fabrication, Gabe Lebering took third. And for nail care, Mia Cacciavillano, I hope I got that right, I'm sorry if I didn't, has fourth place. So we have kids moving on to states in the skills categories at the Career Center. And we have demonstration, they're not demolishing. Demonstration night. Gary's like, please don't tell people to come demolish anything. On March 6th, if you have never been, please, if you can get there. It's a Thursday night from 6 to 7:30. And if you saw that building, it's some pretty amazing things that go on in there. So That was a lot, and I'm sorry, but
Great
I
update.
think that's everything.
Impressive, thank you.
President Owen, I have a quick question.
Oh, sure.
Yes. Well, so I was looking at the numbers here. So can we tell if we have, I'm just going to kind of put the two together here, but we have 70 students in the charter school. How many kids go to the Northern Career Center that are at charter school?
So I don't think right now we have any students that are attending cyber charter school and attending the career center. But it is possible, but I don't think we do currently.
Can we look into that?
Yeah, I can. I
Just for
don't think
general
we have-
information, please?
So we do, so when it comes to sending kids to the Career Center, things have changed. Like, so we do have to send kids who live in our district but attend like a private school. So, for example, Grace Christian. So if there's a kid at Grace Christian who they can get a spot. Now, it has to be available to them because there's a lottery for those big pieces. If you're homeschooled, which is I don't want people to think that homeschooling and cyber charter school is the same. They are not the same. They're wholly different.
Right.
That is when the parents have decided to take on the learning for the child, with the child. And that's not cyber charter school. I just want to make sure people understand that completely. We do have
Yeah, the
one of
question.
those.
You take one school that goes.
So I don't think we can let cyber charter school kids come in. We do potentially have to allow them to come in to take a dual enrollment course, but I don't think we have any of those right now.
Can we just verify that?
Yeah, I'll double check.
Just
No
I'm
problem.
curious with the numbers.
Yep,
please.
absolutely. I thought you were gonna ask me a ratio question, like 75-25, that math, that formula that they've worked on for 11 years. I've tried to figure out that formula.
Not that, we're not going to go that far.
Career Center.
All right,
That formula.
next, PSBA, Mrs. Smart?
I did attend a Zoom training for new PSBA sort of leads, and the team just sort of introduced the different aspects of PSBA and just the resources that are available. So it was interesting, and I mean, there's lots of information available on their site about, any sort of questions the school district might face. That was all.
All right, thank you. All right, next, we are to solicitors' items and reports. Mr. Barrett, anything this month?
Yes, in the last month, I've had several right-to-know requests that have taken some research and some work negotiating with the requester. Right-to-know requests have a lot of restrictions that protect our employees, and we've had a few of them coming through that we have to be very careful so we don't violate somebody's HIPAA rights or something like that. Number two, we've had a couple grievances that are working their way through the system. Hopefully we can resolve them without involving an arbitrator in the expense. Lastly, we had a pretrial on the assessment appeal with Lowe's. We've received an extension of 90 days for us to get an appraiser. I've successfully, I think, negotiated a system on paying the appraiser. So based on the amount of tax revenue we draw, which is roughly, the Athens School District draws half, the county and the township each draw a quarter. And we've had some fairly excellent feedback from him so that we may be able to prevail in this assessment appeal. We have to slow the tide down on this. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Next, we have visitor comments on board action items only. Do we have any visitor comments on board actions tonight? Okay, appears not. So next, financial business. Do we have a motion and a second for financial business?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have quite a bit here. So we have our normal listing of the bills, general fund checks, cafeteria bills, secretary and treasurer report, as well as the student activity accounts. Then we also have a few special items, the Career Center budget that Ms. Cooper mentioned previously. We have the Blast IU 17 proposed budget, and we also have the resolution to set tax commission. Any questions or comments on any of the items in financial business?
Can you pull letter F, please?
So F for a separate vote?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am?
And do they get audited? Do we ever get a copy of their audit?
That's a really good question. I can ask the business manager at the IU if they do. I assume they have to go through a yearly audit. I can get it. And also, just to make everybody aware, you have to vote separately on E because every
Right,
vote
E,
has to
yeah.
be counted.
So E and F will each be separate
Yeah.
on their own, and then so we'll be,
Apologize.
let's do 3 votes here.
Yep.
Another question on Blast IU 17. Remind me, we only pay for the services we use. There is no set
Correct.
tax or bill.
They do not share cost. We are still this IU is still a fee for service IU. So like for our professional learning, our curriculum development, we pay for that. We don't pay for we don't share a common cost that's divvied up between
Right.
the 19 participating school districts. We pay for what we use only.
Is our IT still through them?
Some aspects of our IT, like our fiber, our internet, is still through them. We no longer do our E-rate through them. We do some repairs, like the fobs to the doors and things like that is through them.
What about our phones?
Phones, yes.
But those are all items that we choose to go through.
Yeah,
them,
we
right?
chose
We
to
choose.
purchase those services and have them host that. So they might also host our website.
Is this the last
No,
year for the
they used to.
director's salary or the director's contract?
I think she's either nearing the end or has just recently received a new contract. I will double check. I try not to pay attention because it makes me mad.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board on financial items? Okay, Christine, we'll start with the vote first on A, B, C, D, G, H, and I.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick?
Yes.
Mr. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Rude?
Yes.
Mrs. Smart?
Yes.
Okay, next we'll go for a vote on financial business E, which is the Career Center proposed budget.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick?
Yes.
Mr. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Rude?
Yes.
Mrs. Smart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Okay, and then third in this section, financial business F, which is for the Blast IU 17 proposed budget.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick?
No.
Mr. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Rude?
Yes.
Mrs. Smart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
And Mr. Frisbee?
Yes.
Okay, next personnel items. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have in this section several personnel items, which includes a support termination, support contracts, a couple student employees, some athletic coach contracts, supplemental contracts, athletic coach resignations, and athletic volunteers. So that's in section A. We also have a request for a 3-hour cafeteria position at Lynch, a request to continue a temporary stipend for our HR and payroll position, a request for a temporary stipend adjustment for the athletic secretary, and a request for daily stipend for the athletic director supervisor tasks from August 26th through June 30th. Any questions or conversation from the board on personnel items? Okay, Christine, vote please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick?
Yes.
Mr. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Rude?
Yes.
Mrs. Smart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yes.
And Mr. Johnson?
Yes. Okay, we have no contracts or agreements for this month, so next policies. Do we have a motion and a second for policies?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have several policies here, and Mrs. Smart, I believe the plan was everything that was first read, moving to second read, is that
My
correct?
recommendation,
So,
yeah.
so everything that will be updated to second read, A through K, is the recommendation, okay? So any questions from the board on any of the policies we're voting on tonight? Yeah, Mrs. Smart did a great job summarizing earlier, so thank you. Okay, Christine, for vote?
Mrs. Minnick?
Yes.
Mr. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Rude?
Yes.
Mrs. Smart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Okay, next is curriculum and instruction. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Okay, so we have several trip requests, several overnight trip requests, one of which is the Costa Rica Spanish trip that we discussed earlier. So that's A through K are various overnight trips, and then K would be the school calendar draft for a 25-26 calendar year. So any questions, further conversation on these items? Or Dr. Stage, anything you'd like to share on any of these items?
Just one comment about the calendar. I just want to give a thank you to Mrs. Rhodes and the admin team for putting the calendar together with the input from staff and myself. If people like it, thank Mrs. Rhodes. If people don't like it, blame me. Because there are some things in there I said had to be in there. So that's it.
Will the first 2 days be separated again?
So we have not decided on the slow start yet. It's a conversation we need to have. If we do, we might do it. We may just do it for the elementary. It really is beneficial for those younger students. But then we got childcare, so we're trying to balance that out. So yeah, it's on our discussion list for March.
Thank you.
We have had a lot of positive feedback, but we do also recognize we got to get back to normal.
And tonight, we're just approving the draft. That'll come back for a review later for the final, is that
No,
correct?
we want this to be the calendar.
Okay, so we should remove the word draft from the
Please.
agenda?
Like,
Okay.
I don't want to. Do you guys want to come back and look at this again in March?
I'm just looking for clarity on what was stated on the agenda.
It's up to you guys. I mean, it's whatever.
Well, we'll consider it final unless you come back to us otherwise.
Unless you guys disagree, I think we're not changing it unless you want us to.
I thought you weren't going to let us anyway, so it was your choice.
Like I said, if you like it, thank Mrs. Rhodes. If you don't like it, blame me.
Okay. All right, so then how about back to the conversation earlier with the Spanish class trip? I think I heard superintendent's recommendation was to consider making that a 2026.
I mean, I think
Trip.
in just getting my head wrapped around it, I think gives enough time to get up to those 30 students.
Can we just table it and I'd like more clarification on educational, like, benefit.
So, yeah, absolutely. The board, you guys can table it, but we do have to vote on it at the next meeting. So March, if we have to have more information, maybe I can have David and Mrs. Cooley come back.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I appreciate you. You were smart to bring a coat tonight. I was not. Yeah, absolutely. So
let's table for March.
Or maybe have, yeah, I mean, like the numbers too. Like I mean, to me, like if you can get the numbers.
some potential
I mean,
numbers of how many kids
and
would
people want to
attend.
do it in 2025, I mean, I don't
think
see
a
why
little
we
bit of
hold it
details.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
details on like the structure, because I think like, and I think it sounds like it's all been discussed, but, this would be applicable for students at this level of Spanish, Spanish 3 and
Right.
4, I think I heard. Maybe those students that are sophomore, junior, senior, like that, I think having those details also outlines that we have that sort of full picture would be really helpful.
No, I didn't.
Just can you maybe,
I mean, but if you only got 5 kids that were going to be able to do it for the 2025, you probably wouldn't do it,
but
right?
if you
I
have
mean, it probably
45
would
for
be something you
2026,
do,
it might
so-
actually make more sense. So
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. There's
Yeah.
some,
I don't think anyone here is saying no. I think they're just saying we just need to know more.
All right, so then let's table J for next month, and we'll add it to the agenda for next month.
Sounds hunky-dory to me.
Okay? Any other questions from the board on any other items in the curriculum section? Okay, so Christine, we'll go for a vote, and the vote's going to be on A through I and K. So all the items except for J that we're going to move to next month.
Mr. Owen?
Yes.
Mr. Rude?
Yes.
Mrs. Smart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
yes.
And Mrs. Minnick?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, transportation items. Do we have a motion and a second?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
All right, we have just one item, updated driver list with one driver ad. Any questions from the board? Okay, for vote, Christine?
Mr. Rude,
Yes.
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick,
Yes.
and Mr. Owen.
Yes. Okay, next, building and grounds. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have two items here, the approval of the hot water tank that Mr. Johnson discussed earlier for Lynch, and then also the approval of a vent track machine, which is in the 2024-2025 budget. Dr. Stage, anything you'd like to share on any of those items?
Just real briefly, just so you know, I think the lead time on this quote is a little bit different now. I talked with Kyle. There he is. Sorry, Kyle. I think the lead time is much shorter than the 5-6 week lead time now, correct? Yeah, okay, good. And that probably was discussed in the committee, and I just missed that because I was bouncing around. And also kudos to Mr. Myers for bringing this to us in such an efficient fashion, going out and grabbing 3 viable quotes so that we could put this on the agenda and get what we consider to be an emergency repair done. And technically we did not have to put the vent track on there because it is under the $20-some thousand bid amount, but we did want to make you guys aware whenever we make big purchases like this. So I think, again, Mr. Myers did a great job tracking that down for us, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Myers. One question for you, Dr. Stage. I see the quote was dated October 2nd, 2024.
Yeah.
Why did we not execute that back in October?
I only saw it when he brought it to me.
Okay, so you didn't see it previously? Okay.
No, I didn't.
Thank you, Mr. Myers, for bringing it forward.
Is there any way we can get a more Mr. Myers, if you could do a building report or a grounds report on things, like on the actual buildings, and bring us up to speed on, what do you see? Like, do you see something in the future, near future, far future? Like, I just think we need to be more aware of what's going on in the buildings as far as maintenance and.
So, the irony of this, Mr. Myers and I talking about, I think we're going to talk to you all about, maybe just give you a general history of all of our buildings, of our major projects we've done over the years, to give you guys like maybe a little, with the exception of some of us, we haven't all been on this board for 25 years, and it may be a wise thing that we get a history lesson on the repairs and bid projects and bonds we've done over the years with big projects, and then give an assessment on each building, but also looking forward, getting a building condition survey done so that we can really dig deep into the nitty gritty. I know people mentioned the Alloy 5 study. That gave us a service level look at our facilities. What we probably need is a real deep dive into it.
I have to add, Mr. Stage, that during the finance and operations, he gave us a paper not only stating about the vent track, which we already had in the agenda, but he gave an outline of just some things that he's looking at, which was phenomenal.
Very well
Just
organized.
things that we were showing, maybe down the road, we need to look at this, steps, stages. It was very nice put together, so thank you.
So like we put so much away each year for the maintenance of the turf field. If there's, if we see that we're going to need a hot water heater or AC, maybe we can start.
Should a fund
away
like
for
to
that,
put away for that?
I know this is just 1 month, but just from what I'm seeing at the meeting tonight, this was well put together, and I think we'll probably get that.
Thank you.
Great.
I thank you too.
Okay. Any more questions on the building and grounds items? Thank you, Dr. Sage. Mr. Myers, Christine, for vote?
Mrs. Smart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Frisbee,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Minnick, Mr. Owen,
Yes.
and Mr. Rude.
Yes.
Okay, we have no other business at this point. Next section, we have to visitor comments. Do we have any visitor comments this evening? Okay, the next section are just a few board communication items that do not require a vote, but materials are here for the board's information. Next, do we have any board discussion items to bring up tonight?
Mr. Gabriel, can you give us information about the alumni basketball game that's going to, when the date and time and, and the benefit of that?
Why would you know about that, Mr. Jones?
Well, other than Valley EMS being on standby for all of the alumni. Yeah, Mr. Lichty's business class, management classes have put together the second annual alumni basketball game. I just got the rosters the other day. We have roughly 12 alumni on the girls coming back, 12 alumni coming back on the guys team. They're looking to put together a bunch of fundraising activities, basket raffles, some other things to do at halftime upon entry to the gym to benefit Kids Can't Fight Cancer. Last year was the inaugural season of it, and it was set the bar, and they're taking it and they're running with it. He's got a lot of kids, different teams broken up in his classes in the classroom that are handling the different propaganda to advertise, to fundraise. So I think this is going to be a pretty big turnout this year, a lot bigger than last year. So, yeah. Oh, I just got the date. Give me 2 seconds. February 28th. It's a Friday. Yeah, it's next. It's the Friday night, February 28th. Yep. I believe it starts at 6 o'clock. The girls will tip at 6.
6:30.
Yep. Ladies first, and you'll have I think you'll have the 2 all-time leading scorers in Athens history on the same team again. Aren't you 2 playing?
I think that I think she's on the text thread. We have practice this weekend already. We're not competitive at all. You're figuring out who they're benching.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gabriel.
That's good.
Yeah, I'd like to go watch it this time.
2 4-hour practice.
There's also 2 coaches. The 2 coaches, the honorable coaches, they're coming back. Honorary coaches, Bill Clark will be coaching the guys, and Mr. Dave Wardrop will be coaching the girls too.
Nice.
So it'll be fun. It's a great time for everybody.
Such a great idea.
That was a secret? That was he always had just
Yeah.
we told him never did.
I'll buy it if it is.
I'm not sure we're all coordinated enough to play basketball.
Not anymore. All right. All right, thank you. Do we have any other discussion items from the board this evening? Okay, next, our next meeting, as of now, is planned for March 11th over at Row, 7 o'clock, with committees at 6:15. We do have a need for a brief executive session this evening for personnel and contracts. Lastly, do we have a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, adjourn. Thank you all. All right, gotta sign some stuff.